Translation. Such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within this world. Please repeat. Such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Report. A person in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi, is also called a sadhu because he renounces everything: his home, his comfort, his friends, his relatives, and his duties to friends and to family. He renounces everything for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A sannyasi is generally in the renounced order of life, but his renunciation will be successful only when his energy is employed in the service of the Lord with great austerity. It is said here, therefore, Bhaktim Kurvanti Ye Jidham. A person who seriously engages in the service of the Lord and is in the renounced order of life is a sadhu. A sadhu is one who has given up all responsibility to society, family, and worldly humanitarianism simply for the service of the Lord. As soon as he takes his birth in the world, a person has so many responsibilities and obligations to the public, to the demigods, to the great sages, to the general living beings, to his parents, to the family forefathers, and to many others. When he gives up all such obligations for the sake of service to the Supreme Lord, he is not punished for such renunciation of obligation. But if for sense gratification a person renounces all such obligations, he is punished by the laws of nature. In this verse, Kapila is now explaining the nature of the sadhu, that he's advising his mother to transfer her affection to. Earlier, a few verses. He states, every learned man knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement for the spirit soul, but that same attachment, when applied to the self-realized devotees, opens the door to liberation. Now he's explaining what is the nature of those sadhus. The symptoms of the sadhu is that he is tolerant, merciful, friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all of his characteristics are sublime. Such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and family acquaintances within this world. So, it's important that he defines what is a sadhu, because otherwise, we see so many people, they pose themselves as sadhu, but one has to know by their symptoms, by their qualities, who is a genuine sadhu. There's so many charlatans that present themselves as some advanced spiritual personality, but it's very important, therefore, that Kapila, he gives explanation. What are the symptoms of that sadhu? It's the same thing Arjuna asked Krishna in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna also asked to explain what are the symptoms of a transcendentalist. Text 254, Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in himself alone, he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and envy, is called the stage of steady mind. So, This particular purport, this verse of Bhagavatam, is referring specifically here to sannyasis, or those in the renounced order of life according to the Varnashram social system. Because Prabhupada is speaking about sannyas, that he has given up all his connection with family, with society. He has taken up the service of the Lord specifically, and therefore, because he is 100% dedicated to the devotional service of the Lord, therefore he is free from all other obligations. Now, generally we're thinking that these sannyasis, these are men in the renounced order of life. They take the sannyas, they carry the ganda, and they travel and preach. And this, of course, is certainly true. But these symptoms or these qualities may also be ascribed to many other devotees. Not just simply one in the sannyas ashram. For example, we go to Bhagavad Gita and Krishna explains there what is a sannyasi. Several times in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains the characteristics of sannyas. In text 6.1, Anashrita karma palam karyam karma kurutinam sasanyasi chidogita anira chakriya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no work. Several times in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains what is a sannyasi, and not once does he mention anything about ashram according to the Varnashram social system. He, in fact, describes every time that a sannyasi is a person who is unattached to the fruits of his work. That is, he works according to his duty for the pleasure and satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, such a person may not necessarily be in the sannyas ashram, but may be any devotee who has determined that he will take up the service of the Lord as his main occupation in life and devote himself exclusively for that purpose. Such persons may be grahastas, they may be brahmacharis, they may be women. Everyone can become a sannyasi according to this definition of the Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita. And we should not think that this does not apply to us, that this means only some other sadhu, not me. All of us should make it our business that yes, I should become such a sadhu. This is actually the result of Krishna consciousness. As we were explaining the other day, that we are all meant to come to this stage of renouncing the fruits of work, of acting in Krishna consciousness to achieve this transcendental position from Brahmabhuta. In that transcendental position of Brahmabhuta, one is free from duality, one is not hankering or lifting, one is certainly not attached or interested in sex life, and one's devotional service beginning at that point means that everything that he does is then done for the pleasure and satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. So this is real sannyas or renunciation. Now later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, he goes into some detail explaining what real renunciation is. The 18th chapter is called the perfection of renunciation. The whole chapter is devoted to that topic. And so beginning with text number 1, Arjuna said, Almighty Arjuna, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyaga, and renounced order of life, sannyas, O killer of the Keshi demon, master of the senses. So Krishna is now going to explain in several verses the concept of sannyas, of renunciation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the giving up of activities that are based on material desire is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, sannyas. The giving up of the results of activities is what the wise call renunciation, tyaga. So, The giving up of activities that are based on material desire is sannyas. Therefore, we have to, we should aspire to come to that point of renouncing material desires and acting only for the pleasure and satisfaction of Krishna. As we explained the other day, when we give up this idea, this intention or desire to take the place of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, or as the enjoyer of anything, as the proprietor, or as the dearmost friend of others, then we can come to this position that Krishna is explaining as sannyas. As long as I want to enjoy anything in this world, then I am not properly situated in devotional service. Even if I'm engaged in devotional service, if I have such a mentality or such a consciousness, my service is contaminated or polluted. This is called mixed devotional service. Devotional service that I want to get some results from, not pure devotional service. But when we give up this consciousness of being the enjoyer or being the proprietor, then we can actually begin to engage in pure devotional service. And at that point also, then we become disinterested in the results of activities, or Krishna is explaining here, renunciation or dhyaga. Krishna continues, some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty, yet other sages say that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. O best of the Bhartas, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of three kinds. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even great souls. All these activities should be performed without attachment or expectation of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty, O son of Sita. That is my final opinion. So, Krishna is now explaining renunciation in detail. He's saying that sacrifice, charity, and penance, these things should never be renounced, but rather, one should give up expectation of any result from his activities. Now, we spoke last night about this point in some detail, that modern society is organized in exactly the opposite fashion as Krishna is explaining to us here. Krishna explains in the second chapter, Karmani Varikara Sema Paveshu Kararjanama Karma Pavani Pavoma Pesam Gosa Karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. This point Krishna makes again and again and again in Bhagavad Gita. He drives this point home by repeating it no less than 16 times. 16 times in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is saying practically every chapter, you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Why? Because when we desire the fruits of action, this creates the chain of karma, which forces us to come back and take another birth. And Krishna is telling us how to give up this chain of karma. Back in the second chapter, text number 50. Buddhiyokto jahahita ubhe sukhita duskite tasmad yujasva yoga kamasu kaushalam. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, or arjuna, which is the art of all work. So everything must be done as a sacrifice of Vishnu. He says in the third chapter. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. So this is the art of work, of devotional service. How to work without creating karma. Otherwise, we call this spiritual economics. How to live in this world without creating a karmic result that forces us to come back. How to do everything as devotional service to the Lord, which then frees us from the reactions and allows us to achieve transcendental engagement in His devotional service as the Lord. So, all activities then should be performed without attachment or expectation of results. They should be performed only as a matter of duty. Prescribed duties should never be renounced. If one gives up his prescribed duties because of delusion, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Krishna speaks often in Bhagavad Gita about prescribed duties. What does that mean? What is your prescribed duty? You know? To study? Prescribed duties are given according to Varna. In the Dharma Shastra, according to our Varna, we have prescribed duties, things that we should do and not do. So this is what Krishna is referring to when he says prescribed duties. We have yet to establish Varna within our society. Therefore, when we talk about prescribed duties, it's not clear what Krishna means. We don't know what is our prescribed duty. Generally, what we're doing is we're taking our prescribed duty is given to us by the dominant culture that we live in. Now, all of you young men, or older men even, who now live in this temple, you have your prescribed duty according to the temple authorities. You're doing full-time devotional service. But for those who are married, who are living outside the temple, what is their prescribed duty? How does it function? We don't have that culture established. Therefore, how do we do things is simply as a matter of duty. What is our duty? Generally, what we're doing is borrowing our idea of duty from the dominant culture. The dominant culture tells us so many things we should do and should not do. But Krishna says, hang on. Skip. Krishna says later, Sarva dharma parityagam vikam sarva brajam tom sarva papi Sarva dharma, all these varieties of religion, all these things that we think we are supposed to do, that dharma, parityagam, give it up. Now, Krishna is telling us, give up what dharma? What idea of religion we are supposed to give up? What does that mean? We must understand this is the final instruction of Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharma, what should I give up? What does that mean to me? Now, the dominant culture of this world is created by demons for the purpose of increasing the consciousness of I and mine. They want to increase their sense of who they are. I'm a big, big man. I own so many things. Because I own more, I am more. They want to increase that. And this society is created for that purpose. Therefore, everybody is engaged in fruitive activity. Everyone in this world requires money, which comes from where? Somebody else. So you have to work, you have to do some business, you have to do something to get money from somebody else, because it doesn't occur naturally in this world. So this is fruitive work. Right? I have to go get something. I want the result of my activity. But Krishna says you're not entitled to the results of your activities. Because if you want that, then you're involved in the chain of karma and you must come back again. So there's a problem here, right? If we're going to participate in this modern culture, how do we avoid engaging ourselves in fruitive activity that Krishna tells us 16 times that you're not supposed to engage in? How do we do that? Krishna has given us another way to live in this world, a way that He created, in which He demonstrated also Himself. Living simply on the land, doing agriculture, using agriculture as the economic basis. What's economic development? To increase. Right? So, if you go to the bank today, you can put your money in the bank. What kind of percent return they give you? 9-10% here, something like that. What kind of percent does Krishna give? What kind of return does Krishna give? You plant 1 grain of wheat, what's his return? 5,000%. Not better than 10%. No, 5,000% for wheat. If you plant 1 grain of rice, what percent return you get? 10,000% return. So Krishna is very generous. This is real economic development based on agriculture. You plant 1 seed, you get back 100. 10,000% return. Like this. This is how we are meant to live. That way we can live without doing fruitive work. Although in another sense it is the real fruitive work. Because you actually get the fruit of the earth, right? But you don't not doing it with the idea, I want to get more and more and more. I want to increase my wealth, right? Like this. You plant some seeds for your wheat. One is not thinking, oh, I want more and more wheat, right? You get your porridge pottage, you have enough wheat to last you the year, okay. That's alright. But with money, the whole consciousness changes, right? Because money can be used for all kinds of sense gratification. So therefore the desire for that return increases more and more. It's a demoniac arrangement. Prabhupada writes that the demons have created a way to artificially increase the store of wealth. So this is money. This is actually the economics of atheism. So Krishna is explaining renunciation, how we should actually live in this world. A devotee must live as Krishna is explaining here in Bhagavad Gita. All activities should be performed without attachment or expectation of result. They should be done according to prescribed duties. Our purpose in Krishna consciousness is to create a spiritual culture. What we have here in our Krishna consciousness movement at this point in time is the beginning of that culture, but it's not the final expression. The final expression can only be realized when we establish transcendental village communities in which everything can be done as devotional service to the Supreme Lord, exactly as Krishna is explaining here in Bhagavad Gita. It's impossible, practically speaking, to follow Krishna's instructions in the Gita while living in the city. Because we have to be engaged in so much fruitive activity. So Prabhupada wanted to establish these transcendental communities. At the beginning of his movement, in 1969, he established the New Vrindavan in West Virginia. Why? Because he wanted to teach the devotees how to live this simple life of Krishna consciousness. But the first priority was spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world, and that's what he devoted his time to. Finally, in the last year, 1977, Prabhupada spoke on and on and on about Varnashram culture, Daivi Varnashram, how to live. He was going to come to Gita Nagari to show the devotees how to live that culture. But of course, and he said, this is 50% of my work. It's not finished. So that remains for us to do, because unfortunately he could not come and finish that part. It's for us to do. And this is what we must do. We must understand Krishna consciousness is a culture. It's an entire culture. It's a way to live. It's an economic system also. Not based on fruitive work, but based on the instructions of Krishna as he explains here in Bhagavad Gita. So we have to understand this clearly. What does this mean? When Krishna says, Sarva Dharmam Parityagam, what dharma does he say to give up? That dharma. Up there. This fruitive work mentality, this I and mine mentality, this consciousness that I am the enjoyer, that I am the proprietor. This is what he means for us to give up. That dharma, that idea. And that's dharma according to this modern atheistic culture. That is dharma. Work hard, be successful, make a lot of money. Does Krishna say that here in Bhagavad Gita someplace? No, he's talking about renunciation. Renunciation, not for just sannyasi, for everyone, all of us, to live in that consciousness that I'm doing everything as devotional service to Krishna. Now we practice that here in this temple, in this nice facility that Prabhupada has given us. We can do that very nicely. But then as soon as we leave this property and go on the street, then we give that up and we switch. We start doing I and mine, my car, my house, my bank account, mine this, my that. Why? Because we have not yet developed the transcendental alternative. So this is important to do. For you young men who have not yet entered into the Grahastha ashram but will, it's very important for you because I can tell you by practical experience, you try to have a job outside and be Krishna conscious and it's almost impossible. You ask the other Grahasthas who are trying to do that. It's very hard. And then what to speak of you? What about your family? You're going to have a family, you're going to raise children, and who will your children associate with? Who will your wife associate with? What is their transcendental arrangement? Your children are going to go to the government school and associate with non-devotees, and from the time they're 6 years old, they're going to be learning all kinds of nonsense. And you want them to become nice devotees of Krishna. So there's a conflict here. This culture, the dominant culture is arranged, it's antithetical. It's completely opposite of what we want to have in Krishna consciousness. So we have to arrange another, principally, economic alternative. Because we need economic support. Prabhupada's arrangement for that was that we should live on the land. Grow our food, live simple life, and have time for Krishna consciousness. Why aren't we doing it? Why not? We have developed a culture in our society that it says it's okay for a devotee to continue doing fruitive work and come and give some donation to the temple. You try to chant your 16 rounds somewhere or another every day. And this is Krishna consciousness? No! It's not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness means Brahma-bhuta prasanamanotochitina samshati. Free from duality. Free from hankering and lamenting. That's Krishna consciousness. So if you see some devotees living in the city who are coming to that position, follow their example. But I don't think you will find very many. So therefore, we have to find what is that circumstance that we can put ourselves in that will give us the opportunity to actually come to this transcendental platform. We have two general guidelines for advancing in Krishna consciousness. Accept all of those things that are favorable for Krishna consciousness, and reject all of those things that are unfavorable. Why don't we do that? Rejecting all those things that are unfavorable means rejecting our participation in this atheistic, materialistic, demonic culture. And establishing to do things favorable for Krishna consciousness means to develop another economic support based on land and cow. That is the culture that we are meant to develop. That will allow us to be free from materialistic association, to be able to have time to focus on spiritual life, and to come to the Brahma-bhuta position, to real Krishna consciousness. That is what we are meant to do. We have not done it yet in 40 years of our Hare Krishna movement. So, it's time, isn't it? We have some beginnings in different places, and we've seen that we also have had many failures. But the fact that we have not been successful does not mean that we cannot be successful. We must understand very clearly, we must study this point and see what is required, what do we have to do to make this successful, and put all of our brains and all of our energies together to make it happen. Otherwise, when you get married, you raise your family, you're going to be working in this world, and you're going to struggle with Krishna consciousness. You're going to say, I've been chanting Hare Krishna for 20 years, still I can't control my senses. What's the problem? The problem is the context. Krishna consciousness is meant to be performed in the context of simple village life, and Krishna gave this example himself. That is what we're supposed to do. This will not only save us, it will save the world. If you've been paying attention to what's going on out there, the world is in dire straits. They're saying, how can we live sustainably? What sustainable mean? It means live in a way that we're not destroying the very home that we live on, not destroying the earth. Krishna told us how to live sustainably. Kurmane Baha Paramani Jiva Satchpatam Samaha Ayam Vai Nante Toshi Manatama Nare. One that can go on living for hundreds of years, if he continuously goes on living in this way, for that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma. And what does that mean? Ishabhashamidam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagacham Jagat Tena Munchitam Agriha Kachasiddham. Everything in this world is controlled and known by the Lord. Everyone should accept only those things necessary for himself which has been set aside as his quota, and not accept other things knowing well to whom they belong. This is sustainable culture. But the world doesn't know about that. The world doesn't have an example of that. They're thinking that somehow or other they can tweak their modern lifestyle and adjust it in some way that it will be sustainable. Never. It cannot happen. It is doomed to failure. Because without Krishna consciousness, without understanding, Ishavartamidam Sarvam, without giving up our own propensity to be the enjoyer, the proprietor in this world, it cannot happen. So Krishna consciousness is the only hope for this world. And we have to demonstrate this Krishna consciousness in action to show how to apply it so that we can sustain our lives and be Krishna conscious. Then we can give a demonstration to this whole world how to live happily, a simple life, be Krishna conscious, not only be happy materially, but successful spiritually, and go back to Godhead at the end of this life. This is renunciation. This is prescribed duty. This is how we should do our work. This is spiritual economics. We must have this. Otherwise, when this world collapses, and sooner or later it will, Prabhupada wrote in 1956 in his Back to Godhead magazine, this civilization will not go on much more than 50 years. I'm sorry. 50 years have passed and we can see it's beginning to crumble. So how's it going to go on? Only with Krishna consciousness can it go on. Prabhupada, speaking to the devotees in Los Angeles Temple, 1972, he told them, only you can save this world. And that still applies. And that means you. Only you can save this world. So what are you going to do? Don't go living according to the ways of that atheistic culture. Sarvadharma prityaga. That's what you're supposed to give up. Malmekam charam braja. Do what I say in Bhagavad Gita. Live a life of devotional service, renouncing the fruits and all attachment to the results of your activities, performing them only for the pleasure and satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. So please think about this seriously. This is what we are to do as followers of Srila Prabhupada. And nothing else is going to work. We cannot go on just with the status quo day to day like we've been doing. It's not sufficient. It's not the complete expression of this Krishna consciousness movement. Because we're compromised by associating with the culture created by the demons to increase the sense of I and mine. And please understand these things carefully. And work together. Use your intelligence, you're all intelligent men and ladies. Use your intelligence to understand how to create this transcendental alternative, to establish it, and then preach. You bring people there and show them, this is the way to live. This is how we live, how we are to live in this world, in a way that's eternally sustainable. Then we will see wonderful transformation in this world, which is what Krishna consciousness is meant to do. To create a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. So please, think about this very seriously. Don't stay asleep. Don't simply continue business as usual. as long as the money is coming in, everything is okay. This money is a very artificial creation, which can change at any moment. But we've become conditioned. Here, so many visitors are coming, the money is coming, so we think we can just go on this way perpetually. No, we cannot. We are meant, Brahmanas, are meant to give guidance to society. How do we live according to Shastra? Not to simply live according to the ways of the materialistic culture without even recognizing that. If you're going to be real Brahmana, you must understand Shastra, how to apply it, and how to guide people to live accordingly. We are not doing that yet. This is what we have to do. Hare Krishna. Questions or comments, please? Is there a microphone? Stand up and speak very loudly. Turn off the sound because it can't hear it, and somebody can repeat for us. Okay, sir. Okay. Again, I'm sorry. What's the Okay. You did better? Okay. How is it possible to sustain ourselves outside of this dominant culture as devotees? We cannot come to that point immediately. Okay? It's impossible for us to live completely apart from this modern world. Because we have not yet come to, we don't have the infrastructure to produce the things that we need. It will take time. Our main goal should be to, first thing that we have to do is buy our way out of this society. We have to have money in order to buy land, in order to buy the infrastructure that we need. But that money should be used to establish the tools, facilities that we need to make our own cloth, to make our own food, to produce whatever simple things we need for simple living. Woodworking tools and so on, things on how to work with clay. And at first it may be a little crude. As the society develops, it can become more and more specialized. But we can't do it immediately. We have to understand it will take some time. But we have to understand also that that's the direction to go. Not that just, we just continue going on like we're doing now. There's a goal that we have. That goal is to create a complete transcendental culture, exactly as Krishna has explained to us to live. Simple life in the village. Sustaining ourselves directly from the land, not depending on the mercy of others. Bhagavad Gita explains that when one is overly dependent on the mercy of others, then his spiritual life is spoiled. This is the situation of the modern world. We're dependent on somebody else to give us money. And without that money, we can't survive. But Krishna gave us a way to be independent, living directly on the land, producing what we need directly from the land. Mother Earth, she is not asking for money. Oh, you want some cotton? Okay, you give some rupees. You want some tomatoes? 25 rupees a kilo. No. She's giving freely. So it's meant for us just to take and use. But when we bring this money into the equation, it destroys spiritual life. Money actually destroys the Varnashram culture, the Daivi Varnashram culture. So we should endeavor to free ourselves from the use of money by living directly on the land. Again, we can't get there immediately. It will take time, but that's the direction that we have to go. And that is the goal. It doesn't mean just farmers. When we say go to the village, everybody has this idea, oh, I don't want to be a farmer. I have an education. I have to use my brain. Food must be grown because we all eat. But growing food is not so difficult. In Ukraine, where I live, 70, 80-year-old grandmothers, you should see how much food they produce. One little old lady. It's not difficult. And we require the entire culture, not just people growing food, but we require artists and musicians and teachers, everything that makes an entire culture. They also have to be present. Because if we don't have our own culture, if we don't develop our own spiritual culture, we have to get culture from someplace. And therefore we'll go back to newspaper, radio, internet, something or other, because we need culture. So we have to develop the Krishna culture. And this is our goal. Okay? Okay? Speak up further.
We're very grateful for the lecture, especially the point when it said that we have to make it our business to become a sadhu. My question is in the context of the fruitive desires part, while we are in Bhakti, where it's mixed devotional service. Is it mixed devotional service to pray to Krishna, to empower us to follow the instructions of Guru?
Is it mixed devotional service for us to pray to Krishna so that we can follow the instructions of Guru? Mixed devotional service means I want something for myself. I want to be the enjoyer, I want to be the proprietor, or I want to be the dearmost friend of others. As long as we have some hinge of that consciousness, our devotional service is mixed. So by our process of sadhana bhakti, gradually the consciousness becomes purified. And then it doesn't happen immediately, it takes some time. But gradually this consciousness is given up as we purify the mind, intelligence, and senses. But praying to Krishna for anything, for devotional service, is not an alternative. It's not something for me. What does devotional service mean? It means I want to do something for the pleasure of Krishna. So if we pray to Krishna, give me intelligence, give me ability, give me desire to serve you, how can that be mixed? This is pure devotional service. So we can aspire for that, but again, a very important point, if we want to come to that stage of such purity, we have to become conscious of consciousness. We have to see what is our mentality, what's the mentality of the mind, what's going on, and then we have to check that. And then gradually we'll be able to come to this point of pure devotional service. Okay? What is spiritual economics? Economics means how do we live in this world? That's what the word means. So, spiritual economics means how do we live in this world in a spiritual way? Krishna's explaining that in Bhagavad Gita. That's the whole idea of Bhagavad Gita. How to follow his instructions and live. Krishna says, Mamekam saranam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo. I will protect you. Don't worry. You try to live as I've told you, you don't have to worry about any adverse reaction, nor do you have to worry that Krishna will not maintain you. So, spiritual economics simply means living according to Krishna's instructions. Living the Bhagavad Gita. It's the most wonderful book in the world. Right? Bhagavad Gita. And we come every day and we hear about Bhagavad Gita. But if we don't follow it, then what's the point? Right? Prabhupada talks about those armchair speculators. They come and they pontificate about philosophy. But then afterward they go and do something else. So who is those armchair speculators? We are. Because we're not understanding this point about fruitive work. We come and we hear Bhagavad Gita. Oh, very nice, very nice. And then we go out there and we go do fruitive work. Have to understand. Have to become conscious. How are we living? Modern society is created for the opposite purpose of Bhagavad Gita. to increase I and mine. But following Krishna's instructions, we can free ourselves from this I and mine and from all other material ideas. So this is what spiritual economics means. How do we live in this world in a spiritual way? It requires an agricultural economic base. Because then we can live independently. Then we can be free. And then, so the whole idea is we want to develop this spiritual economics to support the entire Christian culture. Okay? Louder.
Maybe if I understood correctly, last conclude that Transcendental has spiritual economic culture. It's very difficult to be able to go back to free from this and be a good devotee. Very difficult. But it's almost impossible as you said in the next one. So where is the hope that present devotees? And that somebody asked already first question from that. And where is the hope of those devotees who are in present life? Because there is no, as you said, there is no like conditions for the present devotees to live in a village or.
What's the hope? You say, what's the hope that we can actually live this life of Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead because it's so difficult? Prabhupada is the hope. Bhagavad Gita is the hope. And you are the hope. All of you are the hope. What are you going to do to make this a reality? You have to do something. It's not somebody else that's going to do it. What are you going to do? Because it's your life. You have to contribute to it. So it's not something that one person can do. We want to create an entire culture. Culture doesn't mean one person or one family. When Prabhupada says go live in the village, it doesn't mean one family goes out by themselves and they live in the village. No, we have to create a transcendental village culture. And you are the hope for that. Because you are the only ones that can do it. Nobody else can do this. It has to be Krishna conscious. And in that context, Krishna consciousness becomes easy. I live in a village in Ukraine. And then I go also other places, but usually wherever I go, I live in a village. And I tell you, from staying in the village, it's wonderful. But it's sattva-guna, right? Because many devotees say, oh, I don't want to live in the village, it's hard work, that, right? But this is sattva-guna. Like poison in the beginning, right? But in the end, like what? Nectar. So it's a little hard in the beginning because we're conditioned souls and we're conditioned to modern city life. We're conditioned to Rajaguna and Tamaguna. So for that reason it'll be a little difficult. But once we give up that conditioning by being situated in Sattva-guna, it becomes very wonderful. And then Krishna consciousness in that context becomes very easy. Prabhupada tells us that we want to come to Shuddha Sattva, this transcendental goodness. But first you have to come to goodness. So, how do you come to goodness when you're living in the midst of Rajaguna and Tamaguna? How do you do that? Practically not possible. I don't see it. So, how are we going to come to Sattva? Go to the village. Live a life in the village. Do our duty in the village. And do everything for the pleasure and satisfaction of Krishna. So in that context, it becomes not only possible, but easy. And you are all. It's like this. You do what you like to do. Okay? You do what you can. If you have money, you give money. Because money is needed. Okay? If you don't have money, don't think, okay, I'll make money and then I'll get money. That's not it. You can spend your whole lifetime and maybe you won't need money. If you're a young man, you have a lot of strength, a lot of energy, you go live in the village, you raise your family there. The older people who are already successful, they have money, let them give money because everything is needed. It requires the cooperation of everyone. We require these city temples for the purpose of bringing people to Krishna consciousness. Because that's where the people are. They're here in the city. But not that we simply just stay here. We bring them here, teach them about Krishna consciousness, and then send them to the village to live a happy life in Krishna consciousness. Okay? So the city, the temple is a preaching, place for preaching, for recruiting people, for bringing people out of this material world and into the transcendental world of Krishna consciousness in the village. Yeah. We see people are coming from the villages to cities. Why are they doing that? Well, devotees also stay in the cities. They're leaving from the villages. Why? Why are they going to the city? Because that's where the money is. Right? And everybody wants money because everybody wants, what do you do with money? Sense gratification. Why do they want sense gratification? Because they do not have Krishna consciousness. If our devotees go to the village and don't have Krishna consciousness, that means that they don't have a culture to support their Krishna consciousness. We have seen in the past that they leave those farms and they go back to the city also. Because we have this idea that we're just going to make a farm. This is the wrong idea. We have to create a culture. And everything, a complete culture must be there, is supported by agriculture. But it's not a culture of sense gratification. It's a different culture of Krishna consciousness. When we have Krishna consciousness, then what do we have? Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prajyotika causeless knowledge and detachment. You lose your attachment from this world. And then you're happy to stay in that simple life. But if you're living in the city and you're chanting, you're becoming a good devotee, you're feeling detachment, what do? You don't have any recourse. You have to stay in your job. You have to continue to associate with non-devotees. You have to continue to do fruitive work, even though you're experiencing detachment. Now this might be understood as one of the offenses to chanting the holy name, which is maintaining material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on the matter. We have to maintain that way of life unless we have some alternative. That means we have to create the alternative. It's not going to happen by itself. And we have to have Krishna consciousness. It's not just about a farm, it's about a culture so that we have support for having Krishna consciousness. And then we have this wonderful, powerful process by which we can come to this transcendental platform, achieve detachment from this world, and be happy and content to live a simple life. That's what Krishna consciousness is. Okay?
We have a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of new people like new with So, what is the present situation? How much we are successful in that?
Most of the farmers are not doing very well. Because we don't have proper understanding or proper ideology, what are we doing there? It begins with an idea. We have to understand what we're doing there. If we simply go there, generally what we do, and what many people do, we mix up these two cultures. We mix up the Christian culture and we mix up the dominant culture. We mix them all together, and therefore we don't get the result. Okay? If we go to the village with the idea that I'm going to make money from agriculture, Prabhupada said this will ruin everything. You cannot be successful. The idea of agriculture is not to make money. You don't grow dollars, right? Or rupees. You grow food. You grow cloth. They don't go there with the idea of getting money. And this is again why this village life is being spoiled, because everybody wants money. So we have to understand carefully what is the idea. We have to have proper ideology, proper understanding. What is this transcendental culture? What it is that we're trying to do there? Understanding what is Krishna consciousness and understanding the economics, particularly of this village life, is agriculture and cow protection, then we can be successful. But as soon as we want to mix the two cultures, as soon as we want to bring money into that village, it's going to ruin everything. This is primarily, in my analysis, why we have not been successful. We have to understand this very clearly. So I'm going around and I'm preaching this, understanding this ideology. Generally, wherever I go, I get followers, devotees that come forward. They say, yes, I want your guidance to understand. How do we do this? There's devotees, they want to make these village projects successful. So I'm picking up men everywhere I go and speak. And we have to understand this clearly. So we're developing this ideology very carefully, so that, and then we want to make a successful model based on a successful ideology, and then we can duplicate that very easily. Okay. So I have just a few copies of this first volume of Spiritual Economics, if anybody's interested in that. This volume explains modern economics in terms of the gunas, so that we can understand how this modern economics actually works against the development of Krishna consciousness and works against the success and happiness of the entire world. Modern economics is characterized by kama guna, and the result of kama guna is destruction. So we understand that the future of this world is not very bright. It's a very dark future, in fact, if things continue to go the way they are. So we need remedial measures, and the best way to do that is to chant Hare Krishna. So the conclusion of the book is that if we want to free ourselves from the economics of ignorance and come to at least the economics of goodness, we need to increase sattva guna. And because sattva guna are these modes, when one increases, the other one must decrease. So passion and ignorance are increasing, and goodness must be decreasing. And we see the result of that. So if we want to increase goodness, how do we do that? The best way is chanting Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki